welcome to Tabletop Gaming. My name is Charlie, and if you haven't guessed from the title or from the conspicuously placed box on the desk, this is a video looking at Six Siege. I'm so excited. So this is a Mythic Games game based on, of course, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, or inspired by, I should say. So there's a lot of fun of the video game being placed into the board game form. Now this is a pre-Kickstarter copy, which means there are things inside it that may change, some rules that may differ, the rulebook isn't finalised, there are some figures that may look slightly different, and there's no inserts in it either. So instead of doing a standard unboxing to show you every single one of the components, what I'll do is do sort of a brief sort of setup so we can have a chat about the game itself, what it does and what it's doing differently to perhaps some other video game versions that have converted into tabletop before. So without further ado, let's take a look inside. So, Six, the board game, or Six Siege, the board game, is going to give us a 2 to 4 player asymmetrical game. Much like the game itself, or the video game I should say, you're going to be playing against each other. So you'll have one person or team picking the attackers and one person or team picking the defenders across 3 different types. So it might be a bomb mission, a hostage mission, or a control mission. And you get to choose which of those that it is. Now, where do we do that? Well, you do so across the board, which, when I first opened this up, for some reason I was like, this is a really big game board. Why did I not realise it would be so big? But of course, with the amount of stuff that's inside the box, you need enough space to put those out too. And this gives you, because it's quite an enclosed area, you're not using all of the board just for your movement, you're also using it for sort of like putting your cards on and things like that, and it's actually quite an easy way to spread round. You can get 4 people around this board very, very comfortably and be able to play sort of those intricate movements that you're going to need as you're enacting those missions. Now, speaking of missions, you are going to pick your team, and this is a box, but inside the box there are your favourites. So these are named characters in miniature form, which are incredibly detailed and really, really interesting to see. Now what I'll try and do is I'll pop some close-ups of those so you can see what it is that they look like in a little bit more detail, and then across the top you've got sort of markers as to anything that's happened or that you need to be aware of. So you pick 5 of those as part of your team, or you use the ones that are recommended within the rulebook if you're not too sure how you want to start off, or you're not too familiar with the style of play that you want to go with. Each of those corresponds then to a character card that you have that you will use that gives you more information about how you play and what's going on. So our blue ones, for example, we have Blitz, this is the attacker, and then we have sort of information on special powers that he may have, his own defense, and then his weaponry effectiveness. What dice you're going to roll in order to understand whether you've hit the target or not. Now, of course, once you've got those guys, you also need to consider things like your tactical inventory. So, fun things about these characters. First of all, they have specific power-ups, specific things that are unique to them. So some of them, for example, Castle in the attackers will be able to build fortified walls. Those things are included on each of them. Each of them has a specialism, which is why choosing that team can be quite important. You also have a tactical inventory, things that you can use within it as well to make it just a little bit more spicy. That's available on both sides, so make sure when you're choosing, you're thinking about what extras you can grab too. Now in the video game, you're looking at choices. How are you going to get in, and how are you going to make a quick and fast decision in the minute that it happens? Well, the board game tries to do exactly the same. The aim of the game, of course, is to complete the mission, or to defend successfully against the mission, depending on which side you're playing on. Now, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get the same vibe that the video game offers, where you're having to think really quickly and do things really fast and try and make it a really engaging experience? Well, you limit the time you have to make decisions. Really cleverly, that limit comes in the form of a timer. Now that is on an app that you'll be able to pick up once you get an actual copy of it. Unfortunately, it is not available for my type of phone at the moment, so I haven't been able to play with it. However, there is an area in the instructions that does give you the timings that you have. So basically, you'll take a look at it and you'll say, I'm going to play as a beginner. And that gives you 45 seconds a turn to work out what it is that you're going to do next. It might be, though, that you've played it a couple of times and now you're an expert, and now you only get 15 seconds per turn to go. And what you'll do is you'll set the timer as to which way you're playing, you press go. Once you've completed your action, there are reasons why you'll pause, things like shooting and such, but once you've completed your action, you'll pass it to the opponent, who has the same amount of countdown to occur. I say the same amount of countdown to occur. A timer will be in place for them to do so, but as I said, this is asymmetrical, and not just in terms of objective, but also in terms of player. So if I'm playing for the first time, I could take the beginner, whereas if my friend has played it 100 times, they could take the more intermediate option. They have less time than I do, we both get to play a game, but they have much less time to make decisions than I do. What that does is it keeps it quite frantic, it keeps it really engaging and really exciting, in a way that other games, sort of, if you have too much time, the analysis paralysis can set in, and then you don't get the sort of turn-by-turn nature that this has, that the game has. And when you're playing this, let's be honest, a lot of people are going to play this because of the video games, which actually I think is a shame, because I think it has a wider appeal than that. But if you are just there because you're used to the video games, a slow board game with lots of turn-taking, lots of sort of strategy or long drawn-out strategy isn't going to appeal because it's not the same as what you'd get from the video game. This quite nicely takes that frantic energy and pops it into a game that we then play on tabletop. But let's take a look at some more of what's inside this box because it's exciting. So, delightfully, we have these pre-built for us. I will show you what they look like, but I'll try and pop in a close-up as well. So these are set dressings, props, I think is the sort of most callous way to call them. These ones are going to be your provision of cover in certain instances, so it might be that you can duck behind one of these to negate some of the damage that you take. More dressings include things like barricades, dice that have different degrees of hits on them, so that depending on which of those you roll depends on how close you are, and then that depends then on how many points that you're likely to achieve. Also things like security cameras, they look like that, so they'll stand alone, or broken walls to denote any damage that you've done. And then a whole ton of things like this. So these tokens denote barbed wire, so it's just making it that little level more difficult and that little level more like the game itself. And boom! With the magic of filming, I've got a rough setup in place. Now, this setup is sort of a version of the starter setup that they give you as your first one. So you'll get your mission book with everything included, but this will recommend sort of start with this one, see how you go. So for example, to begin with, you would remove the special abilities and just play as normal. You may add those in the same game in the next round, or you may choose to play a different style of game. This is control. Now in Control, you're going to be trying to find the control token so that you can claim victory, obviously trying to be stopped by the other side. So there's some interesting parts in here. When you take your turn, you will move, you might choose to shoot someone, and one aspect of shooting someone to consider is the line of sight. Now, obviously, you have to be able to see your opponent in order to shoot them, right? Well, yes, but sometimes you can be a little bit sneaky. Sometimes you can be peering around a corner. You can use some of your movement to do that, by the way. Or it might just be that it's not entirely clear, given the distance, whether you've actually got proper line of sight. And really all you want to do is get out a ruler and argue for the fact that it is. Well, this game lets you, because line of sight is important. You can't cheese your way through this. So whilst you're playing the game, if you choose to shoot, someone can challenge and say, actually, I don't think it is the case that you have line of sight at all. You pause the timers and you get out the provided line of sight rulers. Got a slightly larger one and a slightly smaller one, and you'll use those to sort of ascertain with the line in the centre, do they have line of sight? Yes. Haha, great. There is a penalty to the side that is incorrect, so if you tried to shoot someone without line of sight, you will have a penalty. If someone tried to get you for not having line of sight and you did, they will suffer a penalty. And then game resume. To shoot someone specifically, you're going to be looking at the distance. Once you've guaranteed you've got line of sight, you look at the distance of where you are in terms of squares, and you allocate that to your game board of the person that is shooting. Across the top, there is information as to what dice you should be using, so coloured squares, and those of course have a higher likelihood of gaining attack points. If they are lower down, if you're closer, you're more likely to hit them. If you're further away, it makes it more difficult. What you're rolling may not come up with as many hits, and then you take that off of the stamina of the opposing team. Now things can get in the way of that, so it might be that you are close enough to cover that you could reasonably get behind cover. That will remove some of those damage markers, and the same if you have your own shields or any sort of obstacles in the way, that will also make a difference too. But remember, you don't want to leave yourself uncovered either, because this is a game of to and fro, and you need to make sure that you have just as much cover as you need to avoid any potential fire coming your way, whilst also being able to fire on your opponent with the hope that you are certain to win, because if you are certain to win, you don't have to worry about return fire. So within this setup, we've actually done quite a lot. We've got barricades in various places, we've got things to consider like our counterpoints, and our team are set up in the appropriate positions. So they're ready to defend against those ready to attack. I have added a little bit of extra spice to it just to make it interesting. Things like the barbed wire, for example. We've got a few more security cameras than it necessarily called for. And then things like the little props that we said about there, just good sort of interesting fun to offer some more cover. Now you wouldn't play this in your game, you would set up as you are told to and then play with it thereafter. But hey, my video, my rules. And this is just to give you an idea of what you could do or how things could work across different ways. So some of these will include bombs, for example, in terms of you will have bomb tokens that you'll need to get to. There'll be hostage tokens that you'll need to locate, and those sorts of things are up to you. This just gives you sort of an overview of some of the key areas of it. But hey, let's give this circumstance a whirl. So, we have Blitz. He is going to try and take a shot at Castle. Presuming he is currently behind this wall, he can use some of his movement to lean over. Now, Castle has some form of defence in this. This is going to offer some cover for them to use. So Blitz, if we take a look at his card, we can see at the top, the weapons range tell us what dice we're going to roll, and then also how much stamina he has, should we need to know that later. But let us use the all-important line of sight. Yep, 100%, that's nice and easy. We know for a fact that we're going to be able to shoot Castle there. And the distance is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means we roll 2 yellow and 1 orange. So let's give that a try. So with that, I don't know if you can see, we have 6 hits, which is pretty monumental. If we attack Castle and have a look at where Castle is, Castle's stamina is only 5, so in this instance we have done so successfully. However, although it doesn't make a difference, because we've got that there, you would lose one of those hits, so it would be a 5, but equally there's 5 stamina. So it hasn't made a difference in this circumstance, but it can do, alongside things like additional defences that you can add in later. Keeping with the Castle example for now, his special actually means that he can place up to 3 armour panels on 3 door locations as replacements for barricaded doors or windows. They behave like a light wall, providing heavy protection. Shots targeted, the operator cannot pierce armour panels. So, if we were to say, actually, Castle's going to use on his action a barricade, he might pop that there. Because the barricade has already been destroyed by Blitz, but he can replace that there to add a little bit of extra time to sort of move around, or to prepare himself for the onslaught that will come, or just delay it a little bit for a couple of rounds. Sounds good to me. Now you've got to remember, if this is a tactical game, you're going to need to get to know your players, you're going to need to work out how best to play in each scenario, and basically just enjoy yourself. This offers you a lot of different ways to play, a lot of different attempts can be made. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a solo mode later along the way, or there were a hacked solo mode in terms of people making their own, because it has the potential for an AI to be quite responsive. So there you have it. Whilst there's a lot there, it's very, very easy to pick up very quickly, and it almost treats you like a video game does in terms of instructions. So pop all these here, this is going to happen, try this, see how this works, and that familiarity means you can pick it up really quickly. It also means you can put it up and tear it down very quickly too, so your setup does not take long at all. This has been Tabletop Gaming. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed our sort of tour through 6 Siege and the stuff that comes inside it. It is obviously not complete just yet, but you can head over to Kickstarter to pledge for your copy. I will pop the details of that in the description so that you can go take a look, and I hope that you are as excited about it as I am. Now, this isn't a review. We've not done a full playthrough to give you an idea on whether we like the game or not, but one thing I will say is that I'm very excited about the game. Everything I've seen seems to work, everything I've seen seems to bring in that video game feeling. We've had so many failed versions from video games into board games that I come at these without a high level of hope, and I'm quite excited by what I see in front of me, and I can't wait for to get stuck in for one, and also for the full game to come out so that everyone can be talking about it as much, I think, as it presently deserves. So positive vibes so far, like I say, not a review, but positive vibes, and hopefully once this has got all of its glossy, shiny box in place, it'll be a real board game contender. If you have enjoyed this video, hit like, hit subscribe, they're probably the other way around, but just do both of them, thanks. And take a look at tabletopgaming.co.uk for anything further you'd like to know about the tabletop, because we do lots like this. There are tons of other videos, be sure to check those out. Let me know in the comments if you are a player of this, video game player presumably at this stage, if you're excited about this coming to tabletop, what your favourite conversions are from video game to tabletop, and I will thoroughly enjoy reading all of them, I'm sure, because I do love chatting to you guys in the comments, so please do leave me a comment. It would be great to get a conversation going. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.